Rush. The most judgmental week of your life. Most PNMs have 1 row gamma. My experience was so chaotic that I ended up having 3. Then the president of the IC was in my room and I was just sobbing. 2 snap bids. Then I decided to crash their bid night. I dropped out of Rush and then out of school. I came back a year and a half later as an unaffiliated junior. And this is that story. Hey guys, it's Hannah. This has to be the most requested video on my channel, especially after I posted my Why I Left Dartmouth for MIT video. This was all anybody wanted to see, but I am finally able to tell this story. I had to wait a little while for semi-complicated reasons, but here it is. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. My Rush experience was emotional, semi-traumatic, and overall just chaotic, but it made for a really great story. I have no advice for how to succeed during Rush, but if you watch this video, you can learn from my mistakes. Okay, why am I making this video? 1, if you've ever been through the Rush process, you'll probably find this hilarious, just how terribly everything went. If you've never been through the Rush process, you'll find this a little bit horrifying. And 3, I need to vent a little bit because it's a really shitty system and we need to talk about that. So let's do it. Part 1, the background. Who? Me. Hi, I'm Hannah. What? Rush. If you don't know, sorority rush, or recruitment in the United States, is the process by which most undergraduate women can join a sorority. A sorority is a house of women or sisters who often party, live together, network, support each other, sometimes do things for charity. And yes, it costs money. At some schools, thousands of dollars. At my school, it's usually just a few hundred. Rush consists of a full week of parties. You start off by going to parties at each of the houses, and you have about 5 to 15-minute conversations with sisters at each house, and then round by round, the number of houses you visit decreases until you get a bid at one house, or at least that's how it usually goes. You guys think this is weird too, right? Like, this sounds weird. When? Okay, so our sorority starts like summer of 2019, early fall 2019, right before my sophomore year of college. As for when it ends, it hasn't yet, but I'll explain that later. Where? I go to Dartmouth College. It's an Ivy League school in the middle of New Hampshire where the only things you can do outside of school are basically drink and like go on hikes. I'm not kidding. Our mascot is a keg and we invented Pong. We have a crazy high number of affiliated students. So for perspective, we have about 4,200 total undergraduates and about 30 Greek houses, and an estimated like 70% of students are affiliated under normal circumstances. An eligible student is any Dartmouth undergrad who is of sophomore standing or higher and has at least a 2.5 GPA. We take Greek life super seriously. Like, there are no bars, no clubs, barely any house or dorm parties comparatively. So Greek life is pretty much the whole social scene, which could be a good or bad thing, you know, depending on your perspective. And this is partly why freshmen aren't allowed to rush. Dartmouth wants you to have at least some identity outside of Greek life. Freshmen aren't even allowed to step foot into a frat until the 7th week of their first term. But then it's Greek life until they die, pretty much. Rush typically runs twice a year at my school. So in the fall and in the winter, we're on a quarter system, so winter is different than spring. Usually 300 to 400 girls rush every fall at Dartmouth. And for perspective, the term that I rushed, of the 372 women that registered for fall rush, only 63.7 of them got a bid. So less than 2/3 of girls that register actually end up getting a bid. And why? I don't know about you guys, but I definitely never pictured myself as like a sorority girl. I hate to be that person, but the real reason that almost everyone rushes is because everyone else does it. Like, Dartmouth Greek spaces are very inclusive, and you certainly don't have to be affiliated to like play a game of Pong or get into a party, but there's a bit of FOMO if you don't participate. So I decided to rush because I wanted to meet more women on campus and explore new opportunities. But yeah, all of my friends decided to as well. Before you rush, you have to do a few things, like you learn how to keep yourself and others safe at parties, what's expected of you once you join a Greek house, and of course you learn about each house. So at Dartmouth, we have 8 sororities that participate in the rush process. For our national sororities and for our local sororities, national sororities mean they have chapters all over the country, and local sororities mean they only exist at Dartmouth. Each sorority has like its own personality and its own reputation, which of course you're told to ignore during rush, but obviously that's impossible, especially because you've already been there for at least a year, so you know a little bit about their reputations. That being said, while frats are open to the community almost every single night, sororities usually aren't. Dartmouth sororities definitely throw more parties than the average school, don't get me wrong. probably because half of them are local, but unlike frats, you rarely would ever like walk into a sorority on a typical on night without knowing anyone there. Because of this, I barely knew anything about the sororities outside of their reputations before I rushed. They each had like a day in the spring where freshmen could visit and like have brunch with sisters, but that was pretty much it. On the other hand, most of my friends somehow like already knew one or two houses that they really wanted to be a part of, and I couldn't understand how they knew that, but like, okay. Everyone was telling me to keep an open mind going into rush, so I left my mind like wide open. Maybe a bit too open. Okay, one last thing. Before rush starts, you get a row gamma, sometimes called like other things at different schools, like a row chi or whatever. Basically, your row gam is there to like privately answer your questions, submit your preferences, like be your leader and make sure you're following the rules. For the sake of the story, let's call my row gamma Emily. Part 3, round 1. Okay, so during round 1, you go to a party at every single house. Guys don't have to do this, they can just choose one or two that they really like, show up, shake the guy's hands, and they'll get a bit or they won't. It's very unequal. Anyway, you show up on time, you're polite, and you stay for the whole party. When I rushed, each party was 55 minutes long, which is a really long time, and you had 15 minutes in between back-to-back parties. Each party had about like 50 to 60 potential new members, or PNMs, all fighting for a sister's attention. This round lasted like 3 to 4 days, I think, and for the record, unlike a lot of schools, Dartmouth doesn't do this before the term starts. We do it while we're taking classes and even midterms, so everything just sucks. It's at least like a 20-hour time commitment during the week. Okay, so I met with Emily in a big group of sophomores and some other juniors to go over any last-minute questions and get my name tag. We have to wear the name tag at each of the parties. Yada yada yada. I get my name tag, go back to my dorm, start mentally preparing. At the time, I'm living in a triple with my best friends at the time. They both have like a good idea of the houses they want and ended up in the same rush group, meaning they had the same row gam. Let's call her Addison. It also meant that they got to go to every party together, so they basically got to like do rush together. I was a little bummed about that because rush is an anxiety-inducing week, and of course I was a bit jealous that they got to experience it together, but whatever, I guess. The three of us made the decision to not tell each other how our rush process was going until the very end. We just let the week play out and see where we all ended up. That was probably a mistake. Don't do that. I'll tell you why in a second. I had one party on Thursday, one party on Friday, 3 parties on Saturday, and 3 parties on Sunday. For the first one, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing or what I was supposed to be doing. It was at a house that like I wanted to like, but like for some reason I just never felt super comfortable there. I walked in and there's like 50 sisters waiting to grab you and talk to you, and they're so excited and they're all dressed up and it's a whole thing. One grabbed me and another PNM and they took us upstairs. You start talking to them, a new sister comes in every few minutes, groups get shuffled. I'm always with at least 2, sometimes as many as like 3 other PNMs talking to maybe 1 or 2 sisters, so you're really like fighting for attention. It was a very overwhelming experience. Like I knew nobody and I did not know what I was supposed to be doing or talking about or whatever. I was just kind of like letting them lead. 55 minutes was up. I ended up in a very crowded room on the first floor, literally like having to scream in order to like try to communicate, and eventually left. That was it. It went okay. I didn't really know what to expect going in, so like sure. But I left there thinking that I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they didn't call me back. No conversation and nothing I said was particularly memorable. But you know, whatever. It's the first night. Next house. My house on Friday was one that was like super chill, but it wasn't quite my scene. Couldn't really see myself there. You know, I went, I had some chill conversations, but you know, didn't really feel like my vibe. Whatever. Next house. The same thing was true with my first house on Saturday. Like really nice girls, but I couldn't see myself like growing in that space. Nothing clicked. I also just didn't know what I was looking for, to be honest. I didn't know much about my second house on Saturday, just that it was the first time I got to like talk to somebody one-on-one, and I was like super excited about that because I had been in groups up to this point. It felt like the first time I could actually have a conversation, and I did, and they went pretty well, and I left there hoping that I would get invited back the next round. Their house was nice, and I felt like a person for the first time during rush, if that makes sense. My last house on Saturday was one that I knew I didn't want to be in at the time because I just heard some shady things about some of the upperclassmen in that space, and I didn't want to like be affiliated with those vibes. I was nice, like I had some convos, again, nothing memorable though. To be honest, that party was kind of annoying because we were outside the whole time and it was really hot and I was wearing pants. I didn't even get to see the inside of the house. Sunday was the last day. I had 3 more to go, and to be honest, I was kind of excited about all of them. It was set up to be a good day. I had a really great time at the first one. I connected with a lot of girls there, and we were one-on-one, and we were laughing, and we were having actual conversations, and I was super surprised too, because this was the sorority that I had probably known the least about going into Rush. But I remember like walking out of there, I was glowing. I knew that I killed it. I was so excited to go back there the next round. Hopefully, obviously. The next house, I was always with a group. Again, the conversations were good and I wanted to get invited back, but I definitely didn't like click with anyone during the party, you know, and some of my answers to the questions were weird. The last house of round one for me was one that I had visited a few times as a freshman because I knew some upperclassmen there, and like I was comfortable in that space, but like I didn't know too many sisters. I talked to a lot of girls and I had a really fun time, but that house is known for being really particular about the girls that they invite back. So obviously like I had a fun time and I enjoyed it, but I wasn't like expecting to be invited back. So at the end of round one, I met with Emily again one-on-one and we chatted, and I had to tell her my top 5 houses and rank my bottom 3. After I told her, she applauded me for not making the usual choices in my rankings. For round 2, I could get called back to anywhere from 0 to 5 houses, including the ones that I ranked at the bottom. So even if I didn't want to go back to a house, there was still a strong chance that like I would have to, all based on how the sororities ranked me. The next day, I met with Emily to get my schedule for round 2, and I knew I was about to get some news when I walked in, and she said to me, you know, it's totally normal for girls not to get invited back to their top houses. Nice. If I get blacklisted for posting this video, that'd be awkward. Part 4, round 2. Cool, nice. Things are clearly really going well for me. She gives me back my schedule, and honestly it wasn't that surprising. As a reminder, you could get called back to a maximum of 5 houses of the 8 total. You listed your preferences, but during round 1 and even round 2, it doesn't really matter what you think or what you want unless you're really hot shit. It's completely the house's choices where you go for round 2. I got called back to the 2 houses that I had a really good time at for round 1, had good conversations at, and was excited about being invited back to, and then I got called back to 2 other houses that I didn't put in my top 5. So after round 1, I was cut by half of the sororities. My close friends all got invited back to 5 houses, but I was like, whatever, you know, 4's not bad. But I will definitely say that is when a few things hit me. For the first time, I was like, damn, the houses that didn't invite me back are just gone forever. What I got is only what I got. Rush changes your identity by ascribing you a new label and subsequent stereotypes. Who will I become? Which is super dramatic and stupid. I blame the literature class I was taking at the time for talking so much about identity during that week. For the record, they did that on purpose because they knew it was Rush. You'll notice very quickly that I overthought all of this shit, which is part of what made the experience so terrible. But there's a little truth to it. I mean, like, I knew nothing about any of the places that I was visiting a week before, and basically overnight my socially anxious ass is supposed to find my new home and sisters. What? But whatever. I was starting to get a little bit anxious and like really confused, and I wanted to talk about it, but I wasn't really vibing with Emily. But my friends who each had the same row gamma were having like a really positive Rush experience, I could tell, and they really liked their row gam, so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna hit up their row gam, see if she wants to chat, because she sounds like a nice person. So I met up with Addison at one of our on-campus like cafes, and we talked for a little bit. She was super nice. I told her everything I just told you guys, and we had a really nice conversation about identities and how weird Rush is and how confused I was, and it was actually really nice. The next day, round 2 began, and that, my friends, is when everything turned to shit. Basically, after round 1, there were only 2 houses that I kind of vibed with, but overall, I was just really confused and overwhelmed. But hey, trust the process. To start it off, I got sick. Probably had to do with going to 8 100-person parties in 4 days, but it was nothing crazy, just a cold, stuffy nose, cough, things like that, but certainly not ideal when you have to lug yourself across a 30-degree campus in the middle of fall in a skirt and heels at night to get to 4 parties in 2 days where you'll spend the whole hour talking. I went to the 2 houses that I didn't quite connect with during round 1, and it like was chill. You know, one ended kind of awkwardly because I went overtime and I had to be at another party across campus, so I was kind of awkwardly like, I gotta dip mid-convo. The last person I talked to at the other house was pretty chill, actually. I really vibed with her. We had mutual friends, but like I still didn't feel like that house as a whole was for me. So I went to the house that I really liked during round 1, you know, the one I was glowing after I went, or whatever, and I was super nervous, but I was overall excited. Kind of confused though, because I basically ended up talking to the same people that I talked to during round 1. You know, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I don't think it helped. Like, I knew nothing about that house and I really wanted to like get to know more of the women there. So I was just kind of confused when I saw all the same people again. I went with it, obviously, but my conversations were ass. Like, I could feel myself being boring. I could tell that these conversations were so much more bland than round one. And for the record, I felt like it was completely my fault. After the very first conversation at that house, I felt the L, and I think it kind of stayed in my head through the whole party. So stupid. I low-key sabotaged myself. There are two moments that stick out in my head from this party. The first was I was talking to one new sister and we were having kind of a subpar conversation, and there was another sister and another PMM talking on the other side of the room, and they were just laughing, like having a really good time, like clearly, and in that moment I knew that like I failed. The second was at the end. Before and after, a few sisters spoke to all the PNMs about, you know, what their sisterhood meant to them and all the mushy gushy stuff. So I looked over to the sister that I was talking to and I tried to like salvage myself as much as I could by telling her like how glad I was to be invited back and how much I really liked this house. Except I was coughing in between every sentence, and when I wasn't coughing I was holding a cough in, so my eyes were like watery and I was like barely breathing. I left that party knowing that I had a slim to none chance of coming back. It was a bummer. I went to my last house and it was really chill, good combos, but always in like kind of larger groups. I don't know, I feel like I'm not the kind of girl that stands out in a crowd. Or maybe I'm wrong, but at this point, those were the kind of thoughts that were like creeping into my head. This is kind of funny, but like super random. At every single house that I went to, when I was paired with another PNM to talk to one sister, the PNM that I was paired with during the party ended up getting a bid there. Call me the rushed wing woman, I guess. I got friend zoned during Rush. So yeah, I left those last two parties during round two, not feeling too hot by any means, but you know, also not feeling hopeless, you know, trust the process, all this stuff. Everyone tells you that. I was hoping that I did like just enough for them to, you know, take a chance on me for the final round. I'm terrible at making decisions and like no place felt quite perfect. So, you know, I picked my obvious top two and hope for the best. Rush is the weirdest thing ever. You have all these fake conversations with pretty strangers and everybody treats it like it's the biggest deal ever because it feels like the biggest deal ever, but it's not that deep, but it feels that deep. I went home hoping things would just work out. So all of the round two parties were over by then. Remember how I told you that my friends and I weren't going to tell each other how we felt about houses until the very end? Well, this fell through on that night. We were all so hyped to just finally be done with round two. We were like more than halfway there. So we decided to say F it and tell each other how we were feeling and what we were excited about. One of my friends had gotten invited back to nearly all of her top houses and was even like the rush crush at her top house, so it was going great for her. Another had gotten like invited back to about half of her tops and she was feeling really, really excited about the top two that she had. Then I told them what my top house was and they were shocked. Neither of them had gotten invited back to my favorite house, and they knew they and I had like absolutely no connections to this house prior to Rush. They were supportive and, you know, excited to see me excited. And in that moment, I truly was a fool. I was truly a fool. Yeah. This video is getting too long, so I'm just gonna have to cut it off here. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please let me know your Greek life horror stories in the comments below. Like this video, subscribe, turn on notifications so you'll see my next video. But before I go, I want to tell you guys a little bit about Skillshare. Skillshare is an amazing learning platform for creatives. Skillshare wants to help you grow. You can learn anything and everything from photography to design to drawing to painting, whatever you want to explore. There are no ads and they're constantly adding new premium classes. Start the new year off with inspiration. I'd recommend the course Productivity for Creatives: Build a System That Brings Out Your Best by Thomas Frank. He'll help you learn to develop a professional mindset, create productive spaces, and how to cultivate your inspiration. Skillshare is less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a free trial of a Skillshare premium membership. Click the link, it's free. Thank you so much for watching this video. Feel free to call me an idiot in the comments below because that's how I felt during this whole process. So thank you again. My name is Hannah. Bye, see you next time.